Hello and welcome back, fellow Wasteland survivors. I'm your host, Nasty Bones, and today's video, part 3 of our electrical tips and tricks. We find ourselves at Tanner's Toy Factory, and there is no better place than here to show you guys some of the tips today, because we're going to be working with the electrical conduits and these pipes. And we're going to see some of the different ways we can run it and some of the things that we can use it for to build with. And as you can see, I've even got little stands there. Looks like it's holding it up. Gives it a realistic look. And even this stand here is not only holding up the electrical conduits, but it's holding up the control booth as well. And here we get a good look at some of the ways I was able to arrange the conduits so that I could get it all in here. And we'll just take a quick look at some of these things and a whole lot more in this video today. Now, before we get started, I want to run up to the control booth real quick because I got a nice little shot for you guys. And as you can see, even my railing is made with the electrical conduits. But here we go. This is how I ran the power in this facility. Everything here is working on an individual system or an individual field. So no matter what I have on, it will light up that particular system and any of the conveyor belts that are hooked to it. So I know what's on at any given time. Okay guys, let's get this video started. I'm excited. Now, even though this build is complete, outside I still do have some of the jigs set up that I used in doing some of the electrical work inside. Now, in case you don't know what a jig is, it's something that you would make so that you could repeat over and over and over again a specific pattern that you have created. And I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick how you can make one. And I'm just going to use this particular curved piece to do it. Now, it doesn't matter if you really get it lined up, but I'm just going to kind of use those tiles and keep it straight. Now what I'll do is I'll take out the shortest straight ones and put them down. And then I'll move the center one out. Now what I can do is I can move this piece freely. And I'll line up to it pretty straight, and I'll just move it back what I think is about the distance I want to go. Then I can bring our piece back in. This is like our spacer piece. Put our jig piece on. Take our spacer piece out. And we'll move it one more time. Just kind of line up to it. Move it out about as far as you think. Put your spacer piece on. Now go ahead and put your jig piece on. Now those three pipes right there could be considered as your jig. You could move them around anywhere you wanted to and then complete or continue to make this over and over again if you'd like to. Now there is one very important thing to mention here. When you're manipulating these objects like this, there's a problem that will arise. And it's that some of these objects won't snap in, as you can see right there. And what it boils down to is actually build order, which ones you put in first. And as you can see, I changed the build order and those three now snapped in perfectly fine. We'll see that here again in a second. It's not a huge deal, but it can get frustrating. Also, please keep in mind, these conduits are not the only thing in your inventory that you can do this with. In your entire inventory, there are literally hundreds of things that you can build jigs for. Alright, now that we've seen how to make a jig flat on the ground, let's see how to make one up and down. So what I'll do is I'll use this straight pipe, this small one, to do it with. We'll put on a spacer, and then I'll move the spacer out. And then we'll get a concrete pillar and bring that in. What we're going to do is we are actually going to group select this. Now the difference is instead of going up, we're actually going to sink it into the ground, about as far as we think that we want our space to be. Now the reason is because there's going to be snapping issues. And by doing this, the piece will not snap under the floor, so you don't get a snapping issue. And you could just continuously keep repeating this process. When it pops up, don't forget to select it, hit B, let it go back, and then regroup select it. I moved it down one more time, moved in our spacer, added in a third piece, and then we'll remove the spacer, and then go ahead and group select. This time we'll move it up, and as you can see, we now have us a nice little jig made for going up and down, perpendicular, or whatever damn direction that is. Now, let's take a quick look before we change over to the next segment about the snapping issue. Okay, it looks like we can get these two top pipes to snap, but not that bottom one. And no matter what we try, that bottom one's just not going to want to snap in there. And it's about build order. So what you would do is you would build the two out, take out the spacers, build in your bottom, then apply the other ones back on. And if you guys mess with this a little bit, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's not real complicated. Now, there is another thing that's not too complicated either, and that's how easily these concrete walls actually cover the electrical conduits. I have 3 of them down on the ground, on the floor there, and we're just going to snap a couple of these concrete walls up, and as you can see, it covers it nicely. We can actually get up to 4 pipes wide, 4 electrical conduits wide in the thickness of a concrete wall. And even the ones that are going up and down can be covered over as well. And yeah, your stuff can be hidden very nicely, and it just depends on how you build. If you have these little corners in, it still covers over, and you just can't see any of the electrical conduits. Also, you know guys, another thing, just because they're labeled electrical conduits, don't mean that you have to use them for that. This actually took me about 5 minutes to throw up. Kind of a makeshift cage. And literally another 5 more minutes I could finish it and decorate it. But, you know, from this point on, you could just do whatever you wanted to. Throw up some of these poles, and you could just kind of make a cage. So even though it's an electrical conduit, it can be used for many, many other things that will help give you effects in your settlement builds. And I build all kinds of stands out of them, light holders. Man, the uses are endless. Now let's take a look at another way we can use electrical conduits for something other than running electric through it. And what I've done here is I've kind of got a little mock-up. And you could actually make this floor that we're walking on any height that you want. I just went ahead and chose 1 barn wall height. That's what we're going to use for this. And like I said, you could do any height. We're going to go ahead and lay out a couple of these electrical conduits. And as you can see, they lay out on the floors nicely. Sometimes some of the other objects, unless you have more floor sticking out, they just won't turn green to place them down. Now once I've got them laid down, I'm going to go ahead and put some electrical power conduits on them. And as you can see, they actually set on top of the electrical conduit piping. And this is going to give us a really neat effect, like we're hanging from the ceiling. And I'll place a couple of more power conduits on the ceiling directly above the power conduits that are on the electrical conduit pipe. Man, that's just like a lot of shit to say. And now you can even see, even from that right there, that looks pretty good. Like that's, you know, holding that pipe across there. Let's hook these up. Normally I would take a second and really align these up real nice. But since this is just a tutorial or in some tips, I'm not going to really spend a lot of time lining everything up. But what I am going to do is I'm going to connect 2 of those power conduits together. Now you could really connect any one of them together in any kind of chain that you wanted, but we're just going to do it straight for right now. Now let's pull out a generator and power this puppy up. And I'm just going to go ahead and run it to this upper conduit, which we have connected to the other conduit on the other side of us. And no matter what ceiling light you choose, it will actually turn green at the bottom of the electrical conduit. And I'm just going to throw up, several different ceiling mounted type lights so that you guys can see. It doesn't matter. Even this little one right here, this guy is my favorite. Well, not this guy, this other one that shines down. I put a lot of these in some of my settlement builds. It's a great way to place a light that can shine down on something, but you don't have to have a floor or a ceiling or whatever to do it. And we'll throw up a couple more lights. Now, take a look at this ceiling light here. If you had a little shorter electrical conduit and was doing this, boy, that would really give you a nice, like, office look or something like that, work area. This is just a great way to run lighting through big, large open areas and still be able to power everything. Okay, let's go ahead and throw up another light. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And another thing is, guys, this application can actually be used using our dominant and passive field techniques. And I'm going to show you that right now. So what I did here was I reduplicated our last tip times 3. Then I took a power line and connected each of the very top power conduits to each other. So as you can see, the first power conduit goes over to this one, and now this one branches in two directions. One is to a switch, and then one is to another line of power conduits, which is clear over here on this side. Now on the far right side, it's the same exact thing. It just comes all the way over to the side on the left. The reason I did that is to show you we're actually crossing fields. And then it goes down to the power switch. And then the switch comes back up, and there's another one that's connected right here, and it has 2 lines on it, and they run to a different line, one on each side, one board in from the outside. So hopefully you understood that. I didn't, and I built it. Okay, normally what we would do, or what I've been showing you guys, is we would turn off your switches. I'm showing you that all the switches are on, because to create a dominant and passive field, it doesn't really matter. This is what matters, turning on and off our switches. So we're going to turn everything off, except for this one right here. And it goes to this very far right hand side, and this third row of power conduits right here. And let's go ahead and throw up some lights. Now what I'll do is I'll use some different styles of light so we can see each field lighting up, and the same lights won't interfere with each other. And we'll use this saucer type light. And I'll just throw up a couple, because all we need to do is just see the lights in its section. And of course they're working because that power switch is on. So let's turn it off. We'll turn on the next one, which operates the power conduits on the left and the one row down the center over on the right. And let's use this light. Now this one's kind of fickle because you have to get it just right to turn green, and so it takes a second to actually kind of get this one. There we go. And we'll just throw a couple more over here. Yeah, there's one there, and as you can see, they are coming on. And come on, girl, come on. There we go. Okay, one more. Now let's run over and turn that off. And as you can see, the other lights aren't working. Now this switch is actually going to be something that would light the whole area up. So I think let's use the fan light. What we've got is we've got 2 switches running two different sections. Then we have one switch lighting the whole area up. And we'll just place these on here real quick. Okay, and okay, I think I kind of got it wrong, but you know, hey, for this tip, it doesn't matter where they're at, we get the same idea. I think those other lights needed to be over here, but that's okay. And yeah, they're working great, so let's turn them off and make sure they are going off. And they did. Okay, let's try the middle ones. The middle ones came on. Excellent. And now let's try the very first ones that we put in. And they came on as well. And now, as you can see, we were able to use our dominant and passive field technique even with this setup. This is how I was able to run all the individual systems in Tanner's Toy Factory. Now, there's no way I could show you the hundreds of fun things you could do using these tips. But I picked one out, and what I thought is we'd make a chandelier. Now, I've got two different types of conduit junctions up there. One of them's flat, and it actually has a power conduit hooked to it, which is the one that I'm hooking these straight pipes onto right now. The other one on the left actually has its own power cord hookup, but it doesn't generate any electricity. So unless you had something close by, this is not one that you'd probably want to use. But I just had it out there to show you that you could still use it for this type of scenario if you'd like. Now let's go ahead and put some lights up here and kind of make a little chandelier type look. And I think we'll use these little hanging ones. These are always pretty cool. Now, once again, I'm just making this for you guys as we're going. I don't want it to take a lot of time, so I'm not spending a lot of time lining this all up. You would want to, take a few minutes and get everything lined up just nice or just right from all angles. And then we'll put that light in the center, and we've got a pretty sharp looking chandelier real quick. Now, there's also quite a few other ways to build chandeliers. Now, I've used tables. I've got the railings that go on the top of the concrete walls. I've got a light up there. I've used the conduits, multiple connections. These are built a little bit different. Not really kind of the same way that we've been doing it with the power or the electrical conduits, but in some of my other upcoming videos I'll definitely have more in-depth tutorials on actually how I do this. Because if you place the tables and stuff up there, they will just hit the ground when you take the floors out from underneath of them. Okay, let's go ahead and put up a fan light there. Yeah, and we've got another pretty cool looking chandelier. Now on this particular table here, let's just use these lights. And like I said, there's just literally hundreds and hundreds of ways to use these tips and tricks to your benefit to just really create some awesome effects. And the sad thing is nobody ever sees these, only you. But they're there, and you can feel proud about it because you worked hard and you used your imagination and you just really built something awesome. Also, keep in mind, these electrical conduits can be manipulated in so many ways. It just work with them. You can really make some neat patterns. Let's take a second and step back from the power conduits and talk about another way to run power. Plus, this will give me a way to show off my simple turret stands that I make. They're really pretty simple. I just use two of these metal posts, place one down, and depending upon the direction you place it, this wooden floor plank will just actually snap right to it. It won't snap to the other side, just one side. But what's neat is as soon as you put this other piece on, then the other floor plank will actually snap in on the other direction. And it's a very, very simple turret stand that takes very few resources and actually gives you a 360 degree attack area for your defenses there. Now I'll hook up the power, and I'm going to hook it up to these power conduits that are located on these concrete pillars. Now I hooked it up to the turret that's sitting on the floor piece there, and then connected it to the top. The reason I did is because the wire goes through the floor, and if I was to try to place the turret up there or run the wire up to it, it wouldn't connect because the floor is in the way. So if you do it before you snap the board on, it goes right in fine and the wire goes through the board, no issues. Now what I've done is I've connected 4 of these power conduits to concrete pillars, and they're connected to each one of these other gun turrets, just like the one we hooked up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these in the ground. I don't want any of my wires showing in the air, even though there's no build here to cover it up. Now, if you remember right, the wire goes about 4 walls or floors long, and I'm a little worried about that. This might be a little wider than 4, and that wire may have snapped. So we'll find out when we turn our power on. Okay, on this one here, we got to actually connect our power to it. Now, since we have a couple of laser turrets up, we're generating 8 power. 3 is not going to be enough, so we'll put a 5 up. That makes 8 power. We've got plenty now. And then we'll go ahead and move them in. Now, are our gun turrets working, our laser turrets? Yes, they are. Okay, so the wire in the back didn't snap. And now my wires are hidden nicely, and we could adjust these however we would like to. And as long as that pillar will turn green, it'll go ahead and place there, and we can even spin it around, making the wire even harder to see. And you can just go around and adjust this however you would like. Bring them in closer, spin them around, and yeah, that just really makes that nice and tidy. Everything's working. We've got no wires visible. Also, another thing that we can do is we can actually sink power conduits into the ground as well. Now, there is something that you should probably keep in mind. You might want to leave the object you put it in the ground with in the ground still, in case you ever had to move it. That way you could, you know where it's at. It would be just like in real life when you see power lines that are marked or things underground. It's the same thing for this. And I'll just go ahead and mark it with this electrical sign and this post, and we'll sink it into the ground. Now, I've just made a straight line. It would, all be hooked up when you did it, but now you would know where your power line is running underground with your electrical conduit piping. And then if you ever needed to retrieve it or get it out to work on it, it's as simple as clicking on the post and group selecting it, bringing it back up out of the ground, and now you could do whatever modifications you needed to do to it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's about all the info I can squeeze into this video today. I do appreciate you stopping and spending your time with me. I hope you join me for the next video where we work with light boxes and interval switches, and we make a new outro for me. I've been using this one since I started. It's time for a change. Okay, once again, thank you everybody, and until next time, stay safe and peace.